As we wrap up 2025, I think we need to talk about the 10 deadly sins of real estate investing. Some of these sins can take you out quickly, and some of them will just bleed you dry slowly. We're going to have this conversation with Cody Davis about the 10 deadly sins of real estate investing. Cody, thank you for being here. Happy or Merry Christmas. Happy New Year right around the corner. It's 3 days away from the new year. So what do you got? What's the first deadly sin?
Happy New Year. If folks want to avoid this one at all costs in the next year, it would be not being able to say no. The two-letter magical word, part of my journey, highlights not saying no. I bought every deal I could under the sun. And as we have seen, that has consequences.
Absolutely. It's funny. It's only after you've been in the business probably 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years that you realize the best deals you did were the ones you said no to. And, that's a hard thing for a new investor, especially in the beginning when they're so thirsty for that deal and they learn this new strategy and they're thirsty. And it's like, ooh, that is definitely a deadly sin. So I love that one. I'll start with my first one will be the one I'm probably known for a lot. And that's this term alligator, right? No alligators. What is an alligator? It's something I termed, it's the only picture in my first book of just an alligator eating bagfuls of money. When you're getting started in this game, it's definitely a deadly sin. When you have a big portfolio, you can certainly survive 1 or 2, especially if you refi as you had this year to get out of some stuff. But yeah, no negative cash flow, right? If you're in this game to build long-term cash flow, you don't start by going backwards. I will remind you of a senior executive in my first book who took me in his office and showed me on his whiteboard how he could afford 4 negative cash flow properties in New Orleans right after Katrina. And because there were some special tax benefits, and he was so excited for the tax benefits. And sure enough, he ends up losing all 4 of them back to foreclosure. I think technically 1 was foreclosure and 3 were short sales. But yeah, folks, negative cash flow, no, that's a deadly sin. No, we're not betting on appreciation. We're not betting on your job. It either cash flows day one or it doesn't. And that's my first deadly sin.
To play off of that, it's more of a mindset piece for my second one. I guess this would be our third. You can have a cash flow business or you can have a capital gains business. One is sexy, one is not.
Yeah.
And one of the deadly sins is building a capital gains minded business. I've heard this from Robert Kiyosaki. Is like, you can play that game. You can do that model.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can do capital gains deals where they're not alligators. But if you only play that game, eventually, if you keep scaling, you'll get slapped and it could be big enough to take you out. And so while it's really attractive, when I think about this, I think of the flippers,
mm-hmm.
the wholesalers. They're trying to create this capital out of nothing.
Yeah.
And that is really fun, but that can wipe you out real quick, because when those deals dry up and you don't have those rent checks coming in like you, like myself, like
mm-hmm.
Three Amigos, you're toast.
Yeah. Love that one. Again, you got to know what you're doing and don't be confused. Don't think you're in the cash flow business if you're in the capital gains and vice versa. So that's very well said for number 3. Number 4, I'm going to say giving up control. What do I mean by that? There's a lot of people that got excited about syndications, about, these social media gurus who were talking about, hey, come invest with my deal and all of that. And it's funny, Thatch Nguyen and I were talking one time in the green room at an event, and he's like, Michael, I've learned one thing after all these years. He's like, I said, what's that? He goes, the bigger the name, the worse the return, right? At the end of the day, folks, I know it might be sexy to say you invest with so-and-so and you feel like you have a relationship with so-and-so. But when you start giving up control, you got to realize, and I got this from Jason Hartman, right? Number 1, you could be investing in a crook. They could just be an all-out fraud, right? And Ponzi scheme and all of this stuff. That could happen. Number 2, they could just be morons and idiots who got lucky with timing. Or 3, they could be building a business and they're having all these fees and all this other stuff, and you're being milked dry and you're happy with pennies. At the end of the day, folks, one rental at a time, small and mighty investor, just get 1, just get 2. It means nothing to say you own 1% of an apartment building in Texas or 0.5% of something in Ohio. These are statistics that should be nothing. Control the deal, because once you give up control, you might be investing with a crook, somebody who's an idiot, or lots of other things could happen. And I think there's going to be a lot of limited partners who lose everything in the next year or two. So be careful.
Yeah. And talking about control, let's talk about it on the money side. Short-term debt.
Ooh, yes.
That's obvious. Well, it's obvious when you've been in the business for more than a few years. That is an obvious pain point. You can get into many deals. You can talk your lender into doing a lot of stuff. I know I've done it. I've talked lenders into 200% leverage day one.
Yeah.
Like crazy stuff. But it's always with, there's a caveat to it. 200% leverage, but you have to pay it off in a year. It's like that was a capital gains approach. Cash flow.
No thanks.
It cash flowed day one, even with all that leverage. But the issue is, in 1 year, what are you going to do? Yeah. I flipped it to get out, but it didn't have to go that way.
No. Yeah. I mean, one of the scariest days for me was when I had 5-year debt come due in the crisis. I think it was 2010, right at the bottom. And I had a 5-year debt come due on an apartment building that could have wiped us out. And scariest phone call I ever made was going back to the private note holder saying, I need another 5 years. Now, thankfully, they knew that the market sucked, so they gladly gave us 5 years because they didn't want the apartment back either. But that was a scary phone call. That could have definitely gone a different direction. So yeah, short-term debt is a killer. The next one I'll say.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to bring that out a little further. My only alligator today is because I had to refinance, and the lender, I asked for an extension, and they said no.
Yeah.
It's a 3-year loan.
Scary. Yeah, it could happen. It could happen. The next one for me, which I think we're up to number 6 now, is doing it solo. Again, real estate investing is hard. You got to get around other people doing this. And, obviously we provide a school community. You do the Sunday mastermind or accountability call, which is awesome inside there. But you got to get around other people doing this, because when you do, you realize it's not as scary. You realize there's lots of ideas, lots of possibilities. Everybody in the community is going the same direction, which is powerful. They're at different places and at different paces, but they're going the same direction. And you got to go around other people. If you want to be wealthy, get around wealthy people. You want to be fit, get around fit people. And not enough of you realize that you just need to get uncomfortable and get in new rooms. So stop trying to do this solo is my next one.
I'd say on the opposite side of that coin, raising money for other people before you've done it for yourself.
Yes.
When I was younger, I was 20. I was helping a mentor at the time put together money for his deals. And he was offering these great returns, and they were better than market average on below market average deals.
Mm.
I hadn't bought deals like that. I hadn't bought $4 million properties. Right. And what I was hearing was, hey, you can buy these multi-million-dollar properties, zero money down. But it was that capital gains approach. That's how he was going to get these ridiculous returns. And so I helped make these pitches. And some of these people invested with that individual because they trusted me when I didn't know what I was doing to the extent that I should have. And so what ended up happening was that deal, of course, went bust, as any deal like that structure would. And I ended up selling out of multi-million-dollar position in real estate at 21 to pay those people back. It wasn't my debt, but I felt obligated because I helped these people make up their mind on this. And I'm glad I did that, even though it wasn't my responsibility to build a lot of trust. But raising money for people other than yourself, that's a big no-no.
Deadly sin. Couldn't agree with that more. Again, you never know. Could be a bad deal. Could be a bad operator. Could be a crook. You just never know. So I love the fact that you paid people back. That shows the character that you have. The next one for me really comes from out-of-state investing lessons learned, as I've talked to people over the years. And that's not having trusted boots on the ground. And how do I measure that? Like, it's really simple. It's like, will they show up at your funeral? Right? Will they get on an airplane and they come out to say goodbye to you at your funeral? That's trusted boots on the ground. Because I think a lot of people go wrong with out-of-state investing because they're basically paying everybody, right? Everybody gets a little sliver. And then when you start paying people, you don't really get direct feedback. You get like the softest, most rosy truth, right? Instead of, dude, your tenant's shooting up heroin on the front lawn, right? You might want to get rid of them, or they're doing a, garage on the front yard, or whatever it is. You just need to have trusted boots on the ground. If you're going to go out of state investing, Bigger Pockets talks about the core 4. I actually think it's the core 5, but it's that trusted boots on the ground that you're not paying. Friend, family, college roommate, somebody that's going to drive by your property once in a while, take a picture and say, Zuber, you got a problem. So again, deadly sins, relying on people that you pay and only pay for my next one.
Mine would be negotiating for what you think you'll get rather than negotiating for what you need to make the deal work. Talk about disrespectful offers. An issue and a mistake that I fell susceptible to a lot in the first few years. I offered what I thought would get accepted. And for that reason, almost all my offers got accepted.
Shocking.
Imagine that. Yeah. And what ended up happening is I paid higher interest than I probably should have.
Yep.
I paid a higher price than I probably could have or would have. And so that's a big mistake people make when they're trying to get into real estate. They think, I need to make a deal work. I have to do it. There's never going to be another deal. And so let me stretch, let me negotiate for what I think they'll say yes to, rather than let me put together the offer that fits my buy box, that works for my financial position and moves me forward.
Yeah, love that. My final one, I think we're already up to number 10, is being thirsty to do a deal. I can't tell you how many people I talk to, especially new investors, like they say silly things like, I'm going to do my first deal and know I lose money, right? It's the price of admission, right? We're coming into 2026 and they're like, I want to do 2 deals. And suddenly it's September and haven't done a deal yet. So then they just do a deal to do a deal. No, that's not the name of the game. The name of the game is kind of what Cody was talking to, is go out, do the work, figure out average, and then do great deals. I was asked the other day, Michael, what's better, 1 great deal or 4 average deals? And I'm like, 1 great deal, right? Most people would be happy to do 1 great deal a year. Yes, they're hard. Yes, they take follow-up. Yes, it takes work. Yes, it takes, the blah, 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 but it's worth it. It's worth it. Again, don't be thirsty to do a deal, because that's where you make mistakes. That's where you don't do your due diligence. You take short-term debt, or you pay too much, or whatever it is. It's about doing the right activities, not about the deal. All right. If you do the right activities long enough, a deal will happen. A great deal will happen. Is how I see about it. Cody, you want to throw in a bonus one? It sounds like you got one more.
I got a bonus. And this is something that I really had to check myself on. Thinking you're smarter and you see something that no one else can see.
Yes.
That is a mistake. And that will get you in a bad position. You think, oh, well, there's this deal in this other market that I haven't checked out yet. But those locals, they don't know what they're doing. There's no way they could know. And you're going to lower the expenses because they suck as an operator. They've only owned it for 37 years. And they and thinking you know something that other people don't, there are very few situations where you will actually have that piece of intel. It's not repeatable. This is a very simple business. It's difficult, but it's very simple. And for that reason, it's repeatable. But there are very few times where you're going to have that strong of an edge. And if you think you do, then there's something you don't know.
Love that. Cody, you're amazing, man. Thank you for being here each and every Monday. You are amazing. Thank you for being a part of school. Thank you for leading off our event in Vegas in February. Can't wait for that. Where can people find you?
Cody Davis Business Adventures on YouTube. Post every Tuesday and Thursday. I go live on Mondays with Mark, the financial firefighter. And these videos that I do with you go live on Saturday.
Awesome, buddy. I appreciate you. Take care.
Thanks.